Imagine waking up one morning with a strange, unsettling feeling that something inside you is shifted. Not dramatically, not enough for others to notice, but enough that you can't ignore it. The room looks the same. Your phone lights up with the same notifications. The world hasn't changed. But you have. There's a quiet tension in your chest, like a truth pressing against the walls of your mind, asking to be let in. You don't know exactly what it is yet, only that it makes you uncomfortable, restless, slightly exposed, as if a light has been turned on in a room you've avoided for years, revealing not monsters, but something far more disturbing: yourself. You've always been told that self-awareness is a gift, a virtue, the key to growth, healing, and freedom. Know yourself, they say, as if it's a gentle invitation, as if looking inward is supposed to feel calm, empowering, even comforting. But what if that's a lie? What if the reason most people avoid true self-awareness isn't laziness or ignorance, but fear? What if discomfort isn't a side effect of awareness, but its price? Think about it. Why is it that the moment you begin to really observe your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions, something inside you resists? Why does honest introspection feel less like clarity and more like standing naked in front of a mirror that doesn't flatter, doesn't edit, doesn't lie? You notice how quickly you get defensive, how often you blame circumstances, people, bad luck, how your confidence sometimes feels more like a performance than a truth, how certain patterns, relationships, habits, failures keep repeating no matter how much you promise yourself this time will be different. And suddenly, the question becomes unavoidable. What if the discomfort isn't coming from self-awareness, but what self-awareness reveals? There's a paradox here that few people want to confront. We chase growth, healing, and authenticity, yet recoil the moment they ask something real of us. We praise honesty, but only when it's comfortable. We talk about being yourself, yet spend most of our lives constructing versions of ourselves that are easier to live with, easier to defend, easier to explain. Because the moment you truly see yourself, excuses lose their power. You can no longer say, "That's just how I am," without feeling the hollow echo behind it. You can no longer blame the world without noticing how often you cooperate with the very things that hurt you. You can no longer hide behind ignorance, because now you know. And knowing changes everything. Self-awareness forces a confrontation, not with society, not with other people, but with the uncomfortable gap between who you think you are and who you actually are in moments of pressure, fear, and desire. It exposes the silent motives behind your choices, the contradictions you've learned to ignore, the parts of yourself that don't fit the story you like to tell. So you distract yourself. You stay busy. You scroll. You consume. You label discomfort as stress, boredom, or burnout, anything but what it really is: a signal. Because deep down you sense it. If you keep looking, something will have to change. And change is dangerous, not because it hurts, but because it destabilizes identity. It threatens the familiar structure of who you believe yourself to be. Ask yourself honestly, if self-awareness is so valuable, why do most people stop the moment it becomes uncomfortable? Why do we prefer insight in theory, but avoid it in practice? Why does looking inward feel less like discovery and more like loss? Maybe the most disturbing possibility is this: self-awareness doesn't just reveal truth, it reveals responsibility. Once you see your patterns, you can't unsee them. Once you recognize your avoidance, you can't pretend you didn't notice. Once you understand your own role in your suffering, the comfort of blaming disappears. And that is where the real discomfort begins. Because self-awareness isn't about feeling better, it's about seeing clearly. And clarity has consequences. So the question isn't, why does self-awareness feel uncomfortable? The real question is far more dangerous. What part of yourself are you afraid to see? Because once you do, you'll never be able to live the same way again. That question lingers. It doesn't demand an answer yet, but it follows you. And to understand why this discomfort exists, why it feels so deeply psychological, so existential, so universal, you have to look beneath the surface, into the hidden forces that shape the human mind itself. The discomfort you feel when becoming self-aware isn't a flaw in your character, It isn't weakness, and it certainly isn't accidental. It is the natural consequence of colliding with a mind that was never designed to see itself clearly. Human consciousness evolved for survival, not for truth. Long before philosophy, long before psychology, the mind's primary task was simple: protect the organism, avoid pain, seek safety, maintain coherence, and most importantly, preserve a stable sense of identity, even if that identity is built on distortion. This is where the hidden problem begins. You don't experience reality directly. You experience it through layers of interpretation, defense, and narrative. Your mind constantly edits perception to keep you functional. It smooths over contradictions, it rationalizes impulses, it reframes failures. It builds stories that allow you to wake up each day without collapsing under the weight of your own complexity. Self-awareness threatens this fragile system. From a psychological standpoint, awareness activates conflict. The moment you observe your own thoughts instead of identifying with them, you create distance. That distance exposes inconsistency. Why do I say I value honesty but avoid uncomfortable truths? Why do I crave freedom yet cling to familiar suffering? Why do my actions contradict my ideals? This internal tension is known in psychology as cognitive dissonance, the discomfort that arises when beliefs and behaviors don't align. Most people resolve it not by changing behavior, but altering perception. They justify, they minimize, they forget, they distract. Awareness blocks those escape routes. Long before modern psychology named these mechanisms, Carl Jung understood something unsettling. The mind contains parts of itself it actively refuses to know. He called this the shadow, the traits, desires, and impulses you disown because they don't match the image you want to maintain. Not because they are evil, but because they are inconvenient, socially unacceptable, psychologically destabilizing. Becoming self-aware means turning toward that shadow. And the shadow does not arrive gently. It brings envy you didn't think you had, resentment buried under politeness, aggression masked as righteousness, fear disguised as logic. The discomfort isn't moral, it's structural. Awareness destabilizes the ego's architecture. The ego survives by saying, "This is who I am." Self-awareness whispers, "Is it?" Philosophically, this tension runs even deeper. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that most people don't fear suffering, they fear the collapse of meaning. The stories we tell ourselves give pain a context, a justification, a reason to endure. Self-awareness threatens those stories. It reveals that many of our values were inherited, not chosen, that our beliefs are often adaptations, not truths. To see this clearly is terrifying, because if your values aren't absolute, then responsibility returns to you. You are no longer a victim of fate or tradition, you are an author, and authors can't hide behind inevitability. Existentialists push this even further. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that humans are condemned to be free, not liberated by freedom, burdened by it. Awareness exposes choice where you once saw necessity. It reveals that many of your limits are self-imposed, reinforced by fear rather than reality. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Self-awareness removes the comfort of unconscious living. It strips away the excuse of, "I didn't know." It confronts you with the unsettling realization that avoidance itself is a choice. And culture plays a powerful role in reinforcing this avoidance. Modern society rewards speed, productivity, stimulation. It does not reward reflection. Silence is treated as inefficiency. Discomfort is treated as pathology. Emotional unease is medicated, distracted, or labeled, rarely explored. Aldous Huxley warned that control would not come through pain, but through pleasure, through endless distraction that keeps people from ever sitting long enough with themselves to ask dangerous questions. When stimulation becomes constant, awareness becomes optional, and therefore avoidable. And then there is meaning. When self-awareness deepens, it often collides with a painful realization. Much of what you've been chasing hasn't been fulfilling because it was never aligned with what you truly needed. This creates an existential vacuum, a sense of emptiness that emerges when external goals fail to satisfy internal hunger. Viktor Frankl observed that humans can endure immense suffering if it feels meaningful, but crumble in comfort if meaning is absent. Self-awareness exposes this absence. It asks, why do you want what you want? And worse, what happens if the answer disappoints you? So the mind resists. It clings to habit. It numbs through routine. It avoids the mirror. Not because truth is unbearable, but because truth demands reorganization. It requires the painful process of integration, aligning actions with values, confronting internal contradictions, dismantling illusions that once provided psychological shelter. This is why self-awareness feels uncomfortable. It is not introspection, it is disruption. And this disruption doesn't remain confined to the inner world. Left unresolved, it leaks outward, shaping relationships, ambitions, addictions, and entire societies in subtle, unseen ways. Because when awareness is avoided, something